Thanks for joining me for the second section of 11.7. What we're going to do in the next couple minutes here is look at what happens when they give us the volume. How do we solve for an unknown dimension? And so basically on each of these problems, they'll give us the volume, they'll give us some other information, and we're going to solve for the missing information. So what I want you to do with these problems is always start with the formula for the volume. And in this case, it's a prism. So I know my volume formula is area of the base times the height. All right, and even over here on the triangular prism, it will be the same formula. So I'm just going to copy and paste those onto both of them. Okay, so then we just want to fill in what we know as we go. So starting from left to right, the volume in this formula, they said in this particular case, is 1,000 inches cubed. So I'm going to put 1,000 in on the left side. The area of the base I don't know, but I know if I take length times width, if I take x times x, that would give me the area of the base. So I'm going to write the area of the base is x squared. And then we're just going to multiply that by the height. Well, if you look at the picture, the height is labeled as x. So that would mean 1,000 is equal to x to the third power, or x cubed. And to solve a cubic problem, a cubed variable, the inverse of cubing, is taking the cubic root. So I'll show you how to do that here. It's not the same as the square root. So you want to put this little 3 up inside the radical symbol, and that means we're taking the cubic root. So we're trying to find what times itself 3 times gives us 1,000. So here's how you type that in the calculator. Some numbers are really easy to get the cubic root of mentally. 1,000, some of you are probably already seeing it, but in case you can't, you can always use your calculator. And the cubic root is right above, let me see, under the math menu. So if you go to math, scroll down to option 4, and that little 3 means we're taking the cubic root. So in this case, the cubic root would be 1,000, or a cubic root of 1,000 would be 10, and that just means 10 times itself 3 times gives me that 1,000 that we started with. So the answer to this question would be 10. So not our volume, our height, which was, I guess it'd be x as well. X was going to be 10 units. And what was our unit here? Inches cubed, so it'd be 10 inches. All right, on number 16, we'll set it up very similarly. We're always going to start with the area of the base and the height. In this case, my height is the x, and the area of the base, we're going to have to do a little bit of work to get that. So the area of the base, I'm just going to draw that base. Hopefully you see the isosceles triangle here. Okay, so they didn't tell us it was isosceles. I'm going to assume that, so I can actually use the numbers there to help us out. So they told us that the side edge of the triangle was 9. They told us that this smaller short side here is 5. And so we need to get the area of this triangle. Well, the area of this triangle would be base times height divided by 2. So I know the base is 5. I don't know the height of that triangle. So what I'm going to do is just put an H right here. And if you notice, we have a right triangle. So I'm going to focus on that right triangle right here. And we should be able to use Pythagorean theorem. So if 5 is the whole base, 2.5 would be the bottom. And so I'll say h squared plus 2.5 squared equals 9 squared. All right, so 9 squared is 81. So we're going to do 81 minus 2.5 squared. And so that should give us 74.75. So I did this part mentally. I squared this and subtracted it from 81. And that was 74.75. And then we're just going to square root that. So square root of 74.75. And that's 8.65. So the height is 8.65. Okay, so let's just keep kind of backfilling in here. So that means if this height is 8.65, now I can get the area of the base, because that was the 5 was the base times 8.65 divided by 2. So 5 times 8.65 divided by 2. So that triangle has a base area of 21.625. So area of the base was 21.625. 21.625. All right, so we've got the area of the base. We've got our volume. We're just going to replace those numbers into our formula and solve for height. So I'm going to take that formula down below. And we're just going to start replacing what we know. So volume is 45. The area of the base was 21.625. And the height was x. Yeah, the height, remember, is not how tall the triangle is. The height is the space between the two parallel faces. So that's our x. So now if we divide by 21.625, we get 2.08 to represent our height. All right. Okay, the last one we're going to do together here gives us a solid. And so realize volume doesn't matter which surfaces get covered up by contact. Volume only deals with what fits, inside the shape. So what we need to think of is what kind of shapes do we have. So in this case, the total volume is just made up of the shapes you see. So it's going to be a rectangular prism, which is kind of like that box you see. And then we're adding on half of a cylinder. Half the cylinder. So let's see what that's going to look like. I always write my formulas first and then just kind of develop around the formula. Okay, so let's work on the rectangular prism first. The rectangular prism has a base area. If we choose this as my base, it has a base area of 16. Siri thinks I'm talking to her.
I couldn't find Siri on your music.
Thanks, Siri. You're done. Base area of 16. It has a height of 4. So the volume of that rectangular prism would be area of the base, 16, times the height, which is going to be 64 inches cubed. Okay, so we're going to use that number in our formula right here, 64 inches cubed. Okay, now the cylinder formula for volume was pi times radius squared times height. But that would be for a full cylinder. If we chop it in half, we have to divide it by 2. So we're going to do pi times the radius of the circle, which if you notice the whole base length is 4. So this would have a radius of 2. So we're going to do 2 squared times the height, which again on the cylinder, the height would be the distance between the circular bases. So that would be 4. And then we're going to divide that by 2. So let's just do that in the calculator. So pi times 2 squared is 4 times another 4 divided by 2. So 25.13. And so that's half the cylinder, 25.13 inches cubed. And so the total volume would just be those parts added together. Okay, some of the ones you're going to have to do later. Let me see where that's at. Like here, notice you're not adding this little hole in. This is like a little tiny hole. This cylinder here would have to get subtracted out from the original. Same thing here. This pyramid, or this prism, this rectangular prism would have to get subtracted out from the volume of the big prism. So go ahead and check your progress sheet, see what your next responsibility is, and we'll go from there.